Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life. Isn't that why we're here? Is for God to do that shepherding work. Thank you, choir, for those words of wisdom. I have discovered lately, especially, I think I've probably known it a lot longer than lately, but headlines form our opinions long before we ever read the stories that are under them. And there are three particular headlines and their corresponding stories really screamed loudly to me from the news during the past months. The first one, maybe you saw this too, America's cash glut. It seems that the pandemic, with its shutdowns, its stimulus programs, its forced savings, because there was nowhere to go to spend money, and more, has created this temporary scenario where Americans have more money to spend. And the demand has currently exceeded the supply, so that's why we're facing shortages, workers taking their time to start new jobs, rising house prices, and a reasonably good economy. Well, sounds pretty hopeful, right? Unfortunately, analysts are saying this is probably only temporary, so it's really important that we talk about finances and the plans that we have for the money that comes our way. That's both personally and in the church. For instance, did you know that while people may currently be rather flush with cash, they only have, on average, $1,000 in savings? The second headline proclaimed, the Great Resignation. Has anyone seen that one? More and more people, it seems, have learned about the importance of family and satisfying jobs during this pandemic. They don't want to settle. Maybe they've even decided that the rat race isn't all it's cut out to be. And finally, there are stories about this cultural phenomenon that tends to be very American, instilled in the very young. Instant gratification. The desire to have what we want right now. Now, the pandemic made us face the fact that there are factors sometimes that make that impossible, but my guess is that mentality is still alive and well. So here we are, we have a lot of cash, we're rethinking our jobs and our lives, and we still love the idea of having it all right now. So where do we go from here? In our scripture text from Proverbs, we read, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but wisdom is with the humble. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. One lesson that I have personally learned during the pandemic is the more that I have, the easier it is to waste. I find that if I am not careful, money can just fly through my fingers. Two particularly big money wasters for me, and I'm guessing for many, are impulse buying and eating out. Did anyone else discover their online buying habits changing during the pandemic and beyond? Yeah. It is so easy. And then there are the statistics that show that the average American eats out 4 times a week. Well, I'm happy to know I'm way above average. But whether we're careful penny pinchers or wild and crazy spenders or somewhere in between, there comes a time, and I'd suggest it's right now, that we ask a few probing questions of ourselves. What is your life about? What is your purpose? And does your spending match that? Because if we aren't clear on this, society will convince us that spending is our obligation, our purpose. Do you remember when the first stimulus money came? Many, many years ago, what did they tell us to do? Go out and spend it, right? And if we follow that advice always, all the God lessons that we might have learned from the pandemic will be wasted. Adam Hamilton wrote in his book, Enough, Discovering Joy Through Simplicity and Generosity, which is the book that we're studying together so we dive deeper into these subjects on Tuesday mornings at 10 and Thursday evenings at 6, if you're available. He wrote, "We were created to care for God's creation. We were created to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. We were created to care for our families and those in need. We were created to glorify God, to seek justice, and to do mercy. To be a Christian is to follow Jesus Christ and to seek to do his will in our lives. It is to say, here I am, all of me, I'm yours. Put me to work, put me to serve, use me to accomplish your work." Or, as we learned from the study of Genesis we just concluded, we're blessed to be a blessing. I love the story of 19-year-old Johnny, who heard a motivational speaker talk about the opportunity to bless people every day. Johnny was a grocery bagger, and he took her words to heart. He went home and he tried to think of ways that he could be a blessing to others. And finally, he came up with a plan. Each night, he would search the internet for a positive saying that would encourage people. Then he would print out 300 copies and carefully cut the sayings into individual strips. The next day, he would put one of the sayings in the grocery bag of each of his customers while saying, "I put a saying in your bag. I hope it helps you have a good day. Thanks for coming in." A month later, the manager noticed that Johnny's line was much longer than all the others. Even when he announced that there was no waiting in lines 2 and 3, no one budged. People wanted Johnny to be their bag boy. He touched them and filled them with hope. Johnny got it. He was pursuing a mission that was bigger than the personal satisfaction of just receiving a paycheck. Now, it so happens that Johnny has Down syndrome, but that fact is irrelevant, except to remind us of the truth that we are all God's beloved and have a prominent place in God's kingdom in the making. It's Johnny's generous heart, his creativity, his courage, and his desire to remind others of their belovedness that is noteworthy and inspiring. So Johnny can be our role model, just as that motivational speaker was his. So what is your mission? Can you articulate it? Does the time that you spend and the money you give reflect that mission? That sense of purpose? How can you plan so that you can fully live into your mission as Johnny did? You see, as Christians, this is who we are. Our vision, our mission, our core values, they imply that we are intentional in regularly blessing others in some way. Money, time, all the resources and gifts that we have, those are wonderful tools when we plan to wisely use them to set them apart for blessing. And it gives life expanding ripples. Bishop Michael Curry put it like this: "It's impossible to know in the moment how a small act of goodness will reverberate through time. The notion is empowering and frightening because it means that we are all capable of changing the world and responsible for finding those opportunities to protect, grow, feed, and guide love." So money and other resources provide us with many opportunities to do just that. And like most things, setting goals, writing them down, reviewing them regularly is the first step in making the most of those opportunities. For instance, one of my personal financial goals is to be able to choose projects to support beyond the local church as I become aware of them. That way, when projects come our way, like the upcoming Walk for Down Syndrome in November, we have funds allocated to give beyond the regular giving to our church. Or when our grandchildren reach out to us for the umpteenth time with fundraising endeavors, we have no problems saying yes. So once we have our goals, then we can begin to develop a plan for making them happen. Now, there are a plethora of plans around to help us reach our goals depending where we are and what stage of life. There's the envelope system that works for so many, putting cash aside for every expense. Some of us like to set up different savings or bank accounts for different parts of our lives, or we work with a financial planner. ICS, Interfaith Community Service, provides workshops. The Pima Council on Aging can help with those of us who are getting on a little bit in age. But there are tons of ways out there for helping us to find a plan. Biblically, here's what we can glean from a God-centered perspective, culled by biblical scholars and financial experts working together. They all recommend, number one, that you pay your tithing and offering first. If you remember last week, our first God lesson was about priorities. So as part of your plan, put God first so that you can become a blessing to others. Number two is to create a budget and track your expenses. It's really important to do a written budget plan. Some of us do it online, some of us do it on paper. One person has defined a budget as an attempt to live beneath your yearnings. I like that. And there's nothing more reassuring than knowing exactly how much money you have in the bank and left in your budget. Number three is to simplify your lifestyle, to live below your means, which really means one of two things, doesn't it? You either have to increase your income or reduce your spending. Our theme song is so perfect for that. 'Tis the gift to be simple, because that allows us and gives us then the gift to be free. Number four is to establish an emergency fund. Most experts recommend starting with $1,000, however long it takes you to put that in there, and work towards saving 3 months' income. That can be really big for some of us, but we're here to help each other work toward that. Number five is to pay off your credit cards. Outstanding debts first, and all your outstanding debts first, and to pay them off then as you go. Because if you can't pay off your debts monthly, especially credit cards, the recommendation is to consider cutting them up after they are paid off. If you're in credit card trouble now, you probably got into it gradually, and you'll get out the same way. So get rid of one credit card at a time until you get down to the point of only having one, and then pay on that one steadily until you're paying the bill in full each month. Proverbs over and over again is right on the money when it teaches us to avoid consumer debt. And finally, number six, practice long-term purposeful saving and investing habits. Proverbs 21:20 reads, "The wise save for the future, but the foolish spend whatever they get." Now, I have to say that there have been times in my life where living paycheck to paycheck was the norm. And so we're all at different stages in our life, and we need to take these pieces of advice exactly where we find ourselves and not expect to be like anyone else. Have you heard that old truism? A fool and his money are soon parted. Well, it's not in the Bible, but it's sort of like one of those almost Bible verses. You see, many Americans are only 1 or 2 paychecks away from absolute poverty, just one financial disaster away from bankruptcy. And what they've discovered is the amount of income usually isn't the problem. Every financial advisor will tell you that many people, it doesn't seem like it should be so, but evidently it is. People who make $200,000 per year have many of the same problems as those who have $20,000 a year. It really isn't a question of amount. It's a matter of how we manage what we have, or financial planning. Because to budget and to save, they both require control and restraint. So save for the future and budget wisely, because that is so important if you want to be a blessing to others. And friends, these 6 principles work, and they are an important part of the stewardship responsibilities that we have been given as children of a generous Creator. So you might ask, okay, I know about stewardship, I know about finances, we talk about some aspect of it every year. Why do we have to talk about it? And why do we have to have a whole sermon series on this particular subject? Will you be the judge? Here are a couple of additional facts. 40% of the Christians in mainline congregations gave nothing in offering the first half of 2018, which is the last year we have full statistics. The average per Sunday gift for the first half of the year was $5.60. Now, if you think, well, that sounds pretty good, let me remind you that if everyone in those congregations were all unemployed and on welfare and tithed, they would have received 40% more offerings than they did. Friends, we have the capacity to do so much better than that. Do any of you remember way back a little while ago, the television ad for the lending tree with Stanley Johnson? Let's take a look.
I'm Stanley Johnson. I've got a great family. I've got a 4-bedroom house in a great community. Like my car? It's new. I even belong to the local golf club. How do I do it? I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I can barely pay my finance charges. Somebody help me.
Need a smart way to consolidate your debt? At LendingTree.com, banks compete, and you choose the loan that's right for you. When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Of course, we know that all the lending banks in the world can't solve our financial problems without the discipline of stewardship. You see, Christian stewardship isn't just about how much we give to the church. It's about how we live with everything we have. Following God's financial plan, it really does make sense. So I'm just inviting us all to jump on board today from this moment on as we celebrate what we have and make the best use of what God has given us.